Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, in Georgia, in Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, in Africa, to the United Kingdom, and also to our brethren in Australia, and to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad. Greetings, may the good Lord bless you, and have a wonderful evening. This is our episode number 7 on the subject, the 42 months prophecy. I would like to begin our study on track number 5 on page 74, saying, in track number 3, the harvest, the time from the baptism of Christ to the close of provision, is shown to be illustrated by 12 figurative months, 6 from Christ's baptism to his crucifixion, 5 from the crucifixion to the ingathering of the first fruits, the 144,000, Revelation 14 verse 4, leaving 1 month for the ingathering of the second fruits, the great multitude, in Revelation 7 verse 9. So this reading should harmonize to the statement on track number 5, 110, since both of them are dealing the same subject, the great multitude of Revelation 7 verse 9. Now let us read again track number 5, page 110. It says, Revelation 11 verse 2, but the court which is without the temple, leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. But why leave out the court? Why not measure it also? For since it is a part of the building, it too must be symbolical of saints. Obviously, because it represents the great multitude which no man could number, meaning measure, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues. Revelation 7 verse 9. The last who come from among the Gentiles. The court, in other words, is symbolical of the immeasurable or innumerable harvest of second fruits brought in after the measurable, innumerable harvest of first fruits, the 144,000. It is not measured, meaning investigated, because it represents those among whom there are no bad to be cast out. For they are gathered in after the cleansing of the heavenly temple, Daniel 8 verse 14, after the judgment of the dead, after the separation of the bad from among the good in the church, as illustrated by the parable of the net, Matthew 13 verse 47 and 48. They are those who by name, my people, Revelation 18 verse 4, are called to come out of Babylon, and who with no unclean among them, Isaiah 52 verse 1, come into the already purified and living church of God. Track number 5, 110 and 111. Now, let us remember that Revelation 11 verse 2 is belong to the subject on chapter 10. So, let us read again this statement in 2TG, number 14, page 16. It says, the subject of chapter 10 ends with the second verse of chapter 11, the verse which brings us to the time of the measuring, meaning numbering of the people, which obviously is the numbering of the 144,000 in Revelation chapter 7, verse 3 to verse 8. For they are the only numbered company of people in the thread of prophecy. Thus it is that chapter 10, including verses 1 and 2 from chapter 11, begin at the time of the end and ends with the numbering of the 144,000. Now, let us gradually decipher those things that we already studied. So, I would like to repeat again. Revelation chapter 10, there is only one particular object in view. There must be one subject that had been deal on Revelation chapter 10. But in that subject, let us distinctly separate the groundwork and the particular object in view. And in order for us to easily comprehend the particular object in view, God employed in the scriptures the groundwork according to track number 5, page 34. Now, I would like to remind again that Revelation chapter 10 is a part of the description under the sixth trumpet. For according to track number 5, page 79, we know that the sixth trumpet begins on Revelation 9:14 and ended on Revelation 11 verse 14. So chapter 10 is under the bracket period of the subject, the sixth trumpet. And let us distinctly separate each prophetic event recorded between Revelation 9:14 and 11:14, by which the shepherd's rod plainly told us here in track number 5, page 79, with the 14th verse of Revelation 9 begins the description of the sixth trumpet, and it ends with the 14th verse of Revelation chapter 11, which announces the second woe, sixth trumpet is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Accordingly, each prophetic event recorded between Revelation 9 verse 14 and 11:14 must find its fulfillment in the period of the sixth trumpet between the first and the second woes. We know that the word each, meaning all the prophetic event recorded between Revelation 9:14 and 11:14 must find its fulfillment, according to this reading, in the period of the sixth trumpet between the first and the second woes. But let us distinctly separate the period of the sounding of the sixth trumpet and the period of the fulfillment of the events of the sixth trumpet. Let us focus first to the period of the sounding of the sixth trumpet. We already studied the period of the sounding of the sixth trumpet. It must be in the period of time by which Christ's mediatorial work is in the holy place, seeing that the voice cometh from the golden altar. That voice is the voice of Jesus Christ. So let us read again in track number 5, page 78, the sixth trumpet, chapter 9, verse 13 and 14. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four winds, the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. Then it says, in coming from the golden altar, the command, loose the four angels, shows that the sixth trumpet sounded sometime before the veil to the most holy apartment of the heavenly sanctuary was lifted. Otherwise, the voice would have come from the throne, the most holy place. So to elaborate more, since that voice is the voice of Jesus Christ, and it cometh from the golden altar, shows that the sounding of the sixth trumpet must be in the period of time by which Christ's mediatorial work is in the holy place, or Jesus Christ is in the holy place. So that is the period of the sounding of the sixth trumpet. Because when Jesus Christ is in the most holy place, according to consecrated way to Christian perfection, it is the seventh angel that sounded the trumpet, not the sixth angel. So to repeat again, let us distinctly separate the period of the sounding of the sixth trumpet and the period of the fulfillment of the events recorded on the sixth trumpet. Before the events, there must be a sounding first, because the term trumpet, according to TG 13, page 9, is broadcasting a message. Now, let's go back again to our in track number 5, page 100, saying events to take place just before the seventh trumpet sounds, and then it says Revelation chapter 10, track number 5, page 100. I would like to show you a small illustration. Do you have that diagram? Let me see. Let me see if I could have that diagram. Okay, 195. Now, look at our little diagram. I would like to read first the Old Symbolic Code. Here in the Old Symbolic Code, 3 Symbolic Code, 8 to 10, page 8. 3 Symbolic Code, 8 to 10, page 8. I would like to read that the last part. The time of the end is the period just before the end of the world. That is the statement. The time of the end is the period just before the end of the world. Now here in 2TG, number 15, page 3, Revelation 10 verse 2, then it says, there is but one book in the Bible that has had to be opened, and that is the book of Daniel, Daniel 12 verse 4. And since the first thing which the angel did was to open the book, the analysis proves that he actually appears on the scene at the commencement of the time of the end, the time the book was to be opened. And all of us knew that that angel, that messenger, is primarily applied to William Miller, which is the groundwork. So the time of the end is the period of the proclamation of the message by William Miller. Now let us read track number 5, page 100. It says, this mighty angel, he who set his right foot upon the sea and his left on the earth, and who instructed John to eat the book, has been long understood to represent the message which was proclaimed in both land and sea worldwide by William Miller and his associates. So the messenger in his primary phase, the groundwork, points out to William Miller according to that reading. But we know that that is only the groundwork. Why? Because the description of the angel, according to 2TG 15.3, 2TG number 15, page 3, this angel has all the characteristics of a power that sends down the land terrain, and that causes the spiritual grain fully to develop, for that is what clouds, sunshine, and rainbow indicate. As the rainbow never appears without rain, the angel is therefore the angels that brings the rain and the sunshine for the development of the final harvest, to TG 15.3. And we know that according to one symbolic code, number 5, on page 5, it says, whereas to us, one symbolic code 5, page 5, whereas to us at the present time, the former rain is the spur prophecy, and the latter rain is the shepherd's rod. One symbolic code 5, page 5. Both messages, the former rain, which is the message that had been bestowed by God to Sister White, and the latter rain, the message bestowed by God to Betty Hotep, that messages never been given by God to William Miller. So he could not be the particular object in view, because the particular object in view is pointing to the messenger by which unto him will be given the final development for the harvest. And that must be the last shower of present truth. It is called miracle working truth. So I would like to read 1TG 17, page 4. 1TG 17, page 4. Without this latter rain, the saints could not develop for the heavenly garner, neither could the tares for the fire. By the latter rain, therefore, is illustrated the last shower of truth. And to this last portion of truth must come as freely to every member of the church who lives just prior to the harvest time, as does the rain come to every grass in the field. Just as soon as this final touch of development is accomplished, the sickle is to be put to the precious golden grain. 1TG number 17, page 4. And then it says, plainly then, the latter rain is miracle working truth that causes the saints to mature for the harvest, of which the 144,000 are the first fruits. Revelation 14, verse 4. So, let's go back again, hoping that at this time, we could be able to completely finish the subject on Revelation chapter 10. So, to repeat again, let us distinctly separate the groundwork on the particular object in view. First, the particular object in view in Revelation chapter 10 is the book of Daniel. That little book, according to reading on 2TG 15.3, is none other than the book of Daniel. And the particular object in view is pointing to the time when the entire book of Daniel is completely understood or opened. And it must be during the time of the end. Now, let us read again 3 symbolic code 8 to 10 on page 8. The book of Daniel and the time of the end. When does the time of the end begin? And when was the book of Daniel opened? Is it wide open? Answer. The angel who instructed Daniel declared that the book would be closed until the time of the end. Therefore, in the time of the end, the book must be opened. The word does not say that the book is opened either at the beginning or at the closing of the time of the end, all at once or a little at a time, but simply in the period of the time of the end. However, history proves that the prophecies of Daniel were not all revealed at once, but slowly. The fact that we as yet do not understand the whole book proves that some parts of it are yet closed. Also, the fact that a large part of it is now understood makes it evident that we are living in the time of the end. This time must have begun when the book began to be opened. But if we must declare the beginning of that time in more specific terms, it in a spatial sense began in the year 1844. The time of the end is the period just before the end of the world. 3 Symbolic Code 8 to 10, page 8. So, in studying this prophecy, in order for us to have a clear conception, we need always to be very careful and distinctly separate each event. Let us distinctly separate the time of the end, which is during the period of the judgment that pertains to the dead, and the time of the end during the period of the judgment that pertains to the living. So, there are two separate periods, time of the end. The time of the end in the period of the judgment that pertains to the dead, and the time of the end in the period of the judgment that pertains to the living. Now, in the period of the time of the end, in the judgment that pertains to the dead, it is also divided into two different periods. The time of the end, which is the judgment for the dead, meaning the time of the end when the proceedings is in the holy place, and the time of the end when the proceedings is in the most holy place. Now, or I think it is even more safer to say the time of the end when Jesus Christ is in the holy place, Christ's mediatorial work is in the holy place, and the time of the end when Christ's mediatorial work is in the most holy place, both to the dead and to the living. Now, we already explained, right, in Desire of Ages, page 77, and also on track number 3, on page 72, that the ceremonial service is illustrating Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary, saying all the ceremonies are types of the work of Christ, Desire of Ages 77, and also here in track number 3, page 72. And also, in the statement on track number 3, page 13, right, you can quote that passage, since earthly beings themselves, having never been in heaven, are naturally strangers to heaven realities, 1 Corinthians 2 verse 9. Then in order for God to make heavenly truth known unto them, He must reveal it by means of earthly realities with which they are familiar. Hence, through the sanctuary work on earth is seen the sanctuary work in heaven. Indeed, the sanctuary above being the pattern of the one below, the services of the former are therefore definitely revealed in the services of the latter. And accordingly, in Leviticus 23, that before the high priest will enter to the most holy place on the Day of Atonement, there must be sounding of the trumpet first, or the Feast of Trumpets. And Leviticus 23, verse 23 to verse 25, to inform all the Israelites to afflict their souls so that they will not be cut off. Now, that ceremony is 10 days blowing of trumpets are typical, by which one day equivalent to 1 year. 10 years proclamation, which is also connected to the subject, the sixth trumpet. The sixth trumpet sounded and primarily applied to William Miller, beginning in 1833 to 1844, exactly 10 years, according to White House Recruiter, page 19. The only revelation of new prophetic truth subsequent to the Reformation is the announcement of the year in which was to begin the work of cleansing the sanctuary primarily in behalf of the dead, based on Daniel 8 verse 14, but not then fully understood. As its announcement was made by the First-day Adventists, it necessarily follows that they were the third group of servants with a new and distinctive message And as is well known, they started proclaiming it in the year 1833, announcing that the cleansing of the sanctuary was to commence in the year 1844. Thus in 1833, the clock of parabolic time struck the hour of 6. So that is the antitypical blowing of trumpets, because our high priest Jesus Christ will enter to the most holy place in October 22, 1844. And also that is the very date that the Millerites movement ended, here in 2SR page 97. But as the disappointment came in 1844, through the misunderstanding of what was to transpire at the end of the prophetic period, the movement created by Miller came to its end, 2SR page 97. So the statement in 2TG number 15 page 3 and 4 that the messenger is proclaiming the message in the period called the time of the end. And since that is pointing to William Miller, so the time of the end is the period of time before the end of the world. According to our reading, right? 3 Symbolic Code 8 to 10, page 8. And here in track number 3, page 42 and page 43, it says, in both of these parables, Christ is sounding the forewarning that the investigative judgment will take place in the time called harvest, which is the end of the world, the time in which the 2,300 days culminate. Track number 3, page 42 and page 43. So, perfectly corroborating to the statement in 3 Symbolic Code 8 to 10, page 8, that the time of the end is the period just before the end of the world. And the time of the end is the time by which that messenger began to eat the little book, 2TG 15, page 3 and 4, by which sweet as honey in his mouth, but become bitter in his belly. Therefore, the time of the end is also corroborating to the subject, the midnight cry. Here in 2SR 181, it says, let us read again. The midnight cry was first proclaimed prior to 1844, and the coming of the bridegroom was Christ coming to the most holy place in the heavenly sanctuary for the investigative judgment of the saints. 2SR page 181. So, the midnight cry is also corroborating to the sounding of the trumpets, proclaiming that the bridegroom cometh to the most holy place, or the high priest will enter to the most holy place. And that is the time of the end mentioned in our subject Revelation chapter 10, by which that is the groundwork. Even in the subject midnight cry, that is the groundwork, plainly indicating that in the groundwork, since the voice of Jesus Christ cometh from the golden altar, plainly indicates that Jesus Christ at that time is in the holy place. Therefore, when Jesus Christ is in the most holy place, it could no longer be the period of the sounding of the sixth trumpet, but rather it must be the sounding of the seventh trumpet. Now let us read again the statement in Consecrated Way to Christian Perfection 111 and 112. After the 490 years of the limitation upon the Jews in Jerusalem, there yet remain 1,810 years to the Gentiles. This period, beginning as we have found in the fall of AD 34, reaches inevitably to the fall of AD 1844 and marks that date as the expiration of the 2,300 years. And at that time, upon the word of that wonderful numberer in Daniel 8:14, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. In 1844 also was the very time of the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, and when the mystery of God should be finished, as yet declared to his servants, the prophets. Consecrated Way to Christian Perfection 111 and 112. So it's easy to understand the reason why the Bible says that the voice cometh from the golden altar, to let us know that the sounding of the sixth trumpet must be in the period when Jesus Christ is in the holy place. Because if Jesus Christ is in the most holy place, then it could no longer say that the voice cometh from the golden altar, but rather the voice of Jesus Christ is cometh from the most holy place. But that is not the description of the Bible. The Bible describes that the voice cometh from the golden altar. And we already read that according to Three Symbolic Code 8 to 10, page 8, that the time of the end is the period of time just before the end of the world. Now, in its primary phase, it says in track number 3, 42 and 43, the end of the world commenced in October 22, 1844, the culmination of the 2,300 years. So we can easily understand that the sounding of the trumpets, 10 years, that is the time of the end, just before the end of the world. What is the end of the world? Harvest. But harvest is a broad subject, but that is pointing to the harvest by which Christ's mediatorial work is in the most holy place. So, to be more specific, the end of the world must be the period of time by which Jesus Christ is in the most holy place. Now, we focus our attention to the particular object in view because that is only the groundwork that occurred in 1833 to 1843. 10 years, which is also called the Midnight Cry or the proclamation of the sixth trumpet. Maybe we will no longer enumerate one by one. Why is it that it is called groundwork? But in connection with our subject, the most significant one, that it is only a groundwork because the angel or that messenger unto him was bestowed by God the former rain and the latter rain message, and it cannot be applied to William Miller. Or in other words, since the former rain message is the writings of Sister White and the latter rain message is the writings of B.T. Hotep, so we can easily understand that the particular object in view is the time when the book of Daniel will be completely understood, because that's what it means by completely open or wide open. And B.T. Hotep himself, in his own testimony, declared that there are still parts in the book of Daniel by which they don't understand, and more particularly to Daniel 11 verse 45. I would like to read his testimony in Daniel 11 verse 45. Here in 2TG number 41, this is the testimony of the prophet. Let me see. I think is by which B.T. Hotep says that is the only verse in Daniel 11 by which it is still unfulfilled. 2TG 42 on page 20, I think 26 or 27. Daniel 11 verse 45. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. The only portion of Daniel 11 yet to be fulfilled is this verse, the last of the chapter. And since these prophecies are made to be understood only when they're being fulfilled or after fulfillment, verse 45 is not as clear as we should like to have it. Consequently, concerning the place of his tabernacles and his end, also as to whether another Christian power shall inherit the title King of the North before verse 45 is fulfilled, only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. So that testimony of the prophet says that it is not as yet clear in their days concerning that predicted event. That is concerning when World War II will be resumed. Now let's go back to our subject. So to repeat again, the particular object in view in Revelation chapter 10, first concerning the book of Daniel, that little book. And the groundwork is William Miller, the very first one that had been inspired by God to obtain understanding concerning the book of Daniel, but illustrated by the messenger angel, sweet as honey in his mouth but bitter in his belly. And according to our reading in White House Recruited on page 19, not been able to understand completely or not been able to digest according to 2TG number 15. But the particular object in view must be to the messenger by which the entire book of Daniel is completely understood or completely unfolded. And I would like to read again the statement in track number 5 on page 107. Do the last verse of chapter 10, verse 11 of chapter 10. Do the last verse, verse 11 of chapter 10, brings us to the rise of the Seventh-day Adventist denomination and to the commission to go to many nations. It does not disclose the message which the denomination was to proclaim. So the 11th chapter, being a continuation of the 10th, must disclose it. Now, to repeat again, the divine commission is to preach to many nations. And of course, the statement prophesy again, meaning re-study again the book of Daniel. because the focal point is the book of Daniel. And the Shepherd's Rod also declared in 2SR 227 and 228, when Jesus was asked by his disciples for the signs of his return to earth again. So the main subject is Christ's signs of his return to earth again. 2SR page 27 and page 28. When Jesus was asked by his disciples by the signs of his return to earth again and of the end of the world. So there are two things mentioned here: the signs of Christ's return to earth and the end of the world. One of the many signs he gave was, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Matthew 24 verse 15. It is evident from the words of the Master that the book of Daniel contains information regarding the signs of the times and the end and of the end of the world. 2SR page 27 and page 28. So that is very plain. The book of Daniel contains information concerning the signs of the times and the end of the world and Christ coming to the earth. Remember in track number 5, 102, track number 5, page 102, it says here, to correct the same verse, verse 11. So there are many explanations of Daniel 10 verse 11, the last verse in chapter 10. And to repeat again, since the focal point of chapter 10 is the book of Daniel, so the statement prophesy again can only be understood, re-study again the prophecies recorded in the book of Daniel. But in 2SR 27 and 28, it is even more pertaining to the words of Jesus Christ in Matthew 24 verse 15, when the abomination will stand in the holy place, which is corroborating to our subject concerning the sixth trumpet. So, the clear words of Jesus Christ saying that the abomination stand in the holy place, I would like to explain again, can be easily understood that the determined effort of the exceeding great horn is to darken the understanding of God's people of Christ's mediatorial work in the holy place, which is the blotting out of names. Because the devil knoweth that once our names will be blotted out, our hope is forever gone. Now, I would like to read again the statement here in track number 5, 102, concerning Revelation 10 verse 11. To correct their misunderstanding on Daniel 8:14, the prophetic word of God declared, thou must prophesy again. Thou must prophesy again. That is, repeat the preaching of Christ coming to earth. So, what is the focal point of Revelation 10 verse 11 saying, thou must prophesy again? Repeat Christ, the preaching of Christ coming to the earth, according to that reading. And perfectly corroborating to the statement right into SR page 27, that when the disciple asked concerning Christ's return to the earth, of the many signs that Jesus Christ gave, it is the book of Daniel. The Shepherd's Rod declared clearly that the signs of Christ's return to the earth and the time of the end and the end of the world, the information is given by God to the book of Daniel. Now, let us go back again to the reading in track number 5, 107. That according to that reading, although there is a divine commission to prophesy to many people's tongues, it was not disclosed what message to proclaim to many nations. And according to track number 5, 107, the message is found in Revelation 11. And since only verse 1 and 2 on Revelation 11, which is included in chapter 10, according to 2 TG 14:16, so the message must be found on verse 1 and verse 2. Now, first of all, before we'll go to the message, let us establish again, who are they, the many nations? Now, reading again, track number 5, 105. It says, track number 5, 105. The trumpet symbolism has now brought us up to the time of the ingathering of the first fruits, the 144,000. So that is very plain. The ingathering of the first fruits, the 144,000. First fruits predicates second fruits, for it is necessarily true that there can be no first where there is no second. Wherefore, just as there is a prophetic commission for the ingathering of the first fruits from many nations, so there must be one for the ingathering of the second fruits from all nations. There being Moreover, an important event and a message of the commencement of the ingathering of the first fruits for many nations since 1844. So must there be an important event and a message signalizing the commencement of the ingathering of the second fruits, the great multitude from all nations. Track number 5, 105. So, in that reading, we can easily discern that the focal point of Revelation 11 verse 1 is the many nations. The focal point of Revelation 11 verse 2 is all nations, which is pointing to the great multitude, as is stated in track number 5, 110. So, let us now carefully decipher this very important subject. We already fully established that in Revelation 11 verse 1 is the message that had been given to that particular messenger to prophesy again to many peoples. And that many people is pointing to the 144,000 living saints. And in verse 1, again, I would like to read Revelation 11 verse 1. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. So this is the particular message to be proclaimed to many nations. This is the particular message to be proclaimed to the entire constituent of the first fruits, the 144,000 living saints. And the instrument to measure the temple, the altar, and the worshippers is the rod, the shepherd's rod message. What is the connection of the message that was entrusted to the Seventh-day Adventist Church? The groundwork. Let's read again. Track number 5 on page 108, saying, Thus the doctrine of the investigative judgment, along with the doctrine of ingathering and numbering the 144,000, comprises the present truth committed to the Seventh-day Adventist denomination in 1844. So, what is the message that had been entrusted by God to the Seventh-day Adventist Church? In general term, the judgment that pertains to the dead. I would like to use in general term. And then we will go back to that reading. Because, brethren, if we could be able to understand Revelation 10 verse 1 to verse 11, then Revelation 11 verse 1 and 2, it would be even more easier for us to comprehend the 42 months prophecy. Now, I would like to read first the General Conference Special, page 39, saying, The judgment for the dead, furthermore, is not the message of the great and dreadful day. It does not even touch on the prophecies of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And since the one by whom the message of the judgment for the dead has unfolded has already been dead these many years, and since nothing, not to mention all things, has as yet been restored. Now, so that statement is very plain that the only message that was entrusted by God to the Seventh-day Adventist Church is the judgment that pertains to the dead. And that is the message to be proclaimed to many nations. Now, let me read to you. White House Recruiter. Who are they, the many nations? The 144,000 living saints. Now, let us read White House Recruiter, page 22. It says, the next decisive point of truth is that the judgment of the dead was to be proclaimed to many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. Revelation 10:11, you see? Revelation 10 verse 11, Revelation 10 verse 11, the last verse of chapter 10, the very subject that we're studying. The message that was commanded by God to proclaim to many nations, to many peoples, is the judgment that pertains to the dead. And it says, mark the word many, it never means all, and never means every. Now, ponder deeply, who are they, the many nations? We already read, right, in track number 5, 105. They are the 144,000 living saints. So what is the message that we will proclaim to the 144,000 living saints? We already read in White House Recruiter, page 22, the judgment that pertains to the dead. What is specific? Now, in Revelation 11, verse 1, the proceedings that pertains to the dead is pointing only to the two inanimate objects, temple and altar. Let's read. Track number 5 on page 109 and 110. The temple and the altar inanimate objects must characterize to two classes of inanimate saints, the two classes of dead saints. Reading track number 509. An altar, moreover, obviously cannot be installed in a temple before the temple is built. And furthermore, in size it is comparatively much smaller than a temple. Naturally then, it must symbolize a class of saints, which not only comes after those who are characterized by the temple, but which also is proportionately much smaller. Thus the temple, the first and the largest object, must represent the first and largest body of righteous dead, those from Adam's time to the beginning of the judgment in 1844, while the altar, a spatial and smaller object, must represent a spatial and smaller body of righteous dead, the righteous who die from 1844 on, and who are to come up in the spatial resurrection of Daniel 12 verse 2. Early Writings, page 285. Now, I would like to repeat again. Let us gradually study Revelation 10, verse 1 to 11, and verse 1 and 2 in chapter 11. According to the Shepherd's Rod, in Revelation chapter 10, verses 1 to 11, in track number 5, 107, there is a divine commission to preach to many nations, but it does not disclose what message to proclaim. It seems that statement in track number 5, 107, is perfectly corroborating to track number 1. Now let us link track number 1 and track number 5. Undoubtedly, track number 1 and track number 5 must be closely connected because the many nations in Revelation 10 verse 11 is the 144,000 living saints. In track number 1, the divine commission given by God to Ezekiel is to give message to the 12 tribes, the 144,000. So, it is closely connected. The particular object in view in track number 1 is the first fruits, the 144,000 living saints. The particular object in view in Revelation 10 verse 11 is the first fruits, the 144,000 living saints. Therefore, to understand track number 1 is to understand track number 5, more particularly to Revelation 10 verse 11. On the groundwork, William Miller is the messenger. Of course, the message that he will proclaim is according to the book that he had eaten, which is the book of Daniel, by which 1,000 years ago, even before William Miller was born, predicted beforehand that their experience is illustrated, eating the book, sweet as honey in his mouth, but become bitter in their belly, which is the great disappointment. So the statement in track number 5, page 107, does not refer to William Miller, saying that there is a divine commission to prophesy to many nations, but it does not disclose what message to proclaim to many nations. Second, the many nations is the 144,000 living saints. And in the days of William Miller, the 144,000 living saints did not as yet been in existence. So that statement in track number 5, 107, cannot be applied in the days of William Miller. Second, the message is found in the rod, and the shepherd's rod does not exist in the days of William Miller. Now let us connect first to track number 1. Let us read again, track number 1, page 29 and page 30. It says, the reader will know that though the prophet was bidden to go to speak to his people, yet instead of being told what to say, he was commanded, open thy mouth and eat that I gave thee. And when I looked, says Ezekiel, behold, in hand was sent unto me, and lo, a rule of a book was therein. Moreover, he said unto me, Son of man, eat that thou findest, eat this rule, and go speak unto the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he caused me to eat that rule. Ezekiel 2 verse 8 and 9, and Ezekiel 3 verse 1 and 2. As the words which Ezekiel was to speak to his people were found in the book which he ate, the book can be none other than the Bible, from which comes the message culminating in joy, mourning, and woe. And lo, a roll of a book was therein, and he spread it before me, and it was written within and without, and there was written therein lamentations and mourning and woe. Ezekiel 2 verse 9 and 10. Thy right in Bijijing the slaughter in Ezekiel 9, and the words pronounced in the master's parables, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then said the king to the servants, Bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 24, verse 50-51, and Matthew 22, verse 13. In page 31, it says, track number 1, page 31. When Ezekiel ate the book, it was, as is also to be noted in his mouth, as honey for sweetness, but not bitter in his belly, as was the one which John ate in Revelation 10, verse 10. Though therefore, as the word shows, there will be no disappointment with this message, as there was with the one in 1844 AD. Yet sadly, it declares that to its warning, the people to whom it is sent will stop their ears and close their doors. Now, who are they? The people by which God commanded Ezekiel to speak. Now, in page 14, in track number 1, it says, these mandatory words, let's read the statement. These mandatory words of weighty significance to all reveal that the message which the prophet received is only for God's people. Track number 1, page 14. In page 11, it says, when will this prophetic vision be fulfilled? Track number 1, page 11. When will this prophetic vision be fulfilled? Then says, since at the time of the vision, the house of Judah, the two-tribe kingdom, was in captivity in the land of the Chaldeans, and the house of Israel, the 10-tribe kingdom, was in dispersion among the nations, whither it had been carried away and scattered some years before. 2 Kings 17:6, and we know that was 721 BC. There was no possibility of Ezekiel delivering the message to them. And as it is to both the house of Israel and the house of Judah, Ezekiel 9 verse 9, the 12 tribes, consequently, it was prophetic in Ezekiel's time. Track number 1, page 11. So let us go back again. The focal point in that particular object in view, by which the message to be given is to many nations. And the many nations mentioned in Revelation 10 verse 11 is the 144,000 living saints, according to track number 5, page 105. The same with the divine commission given by God to Ezekiel to go to speak to the 12 tribes, the 144,000 living saints. And B.T. Hotep made a comparison. In the particular object in view, the book that he ate is the book of Daniel, by which sweet as honey in his mouth, but bitter in his belly. In track number 1, page 31. But when Ezekiel ate the book, sweet as honey in his mouth, but no longer bitter in his belly, meaning no more disappointment. And the book that prophet ate is the Bible. Now, I would like to read answerer number 5, page 55. Answerer number 5, page 55. The Bible and the books of the Spirit of prophecy being the sole source of the shepherd's rod message. Therefore, when the rod is taught, the Bible and the spirit of prophecy are taught. Answerer number 5, page 55. Now, Revelation 11 verse 1 is very plain. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod. That is the shepherd's rod message. That through the shepherd's rod message, not only the Bible, but as well as the spirit of prophecy are taught, completely unfolded. So, the statement in Daniel chapter 10, on verse 21, but I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth, and there is none that holdeth with me in these things, but Michael your prince. In 2TG 33, in 2TG number 33, on page, let's read the statement, page 10, Daniel 10 verse 21, but I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth, and there is none that holdeth with me in these things, but Michael your prince. Daniel was then promised all the light that could be given, not only on the vision of chapter 8, but on all that is noted in the scripture of truth in connection with the vision. What is the vision of Daniel? The cleansing of the sanctuary. So, the promise is that it will be completely unfolded. Now, let us go back again to our main subject. And one by one, let us concretely establish those things that had been made plain. So, I would like to read again in track number 6 on page 65, saying, the Revelator also, having been given a vision of these two movements, recorded in chapters 10 and 11. track number 6, page 65. But we already explained that two movements, which is the groundwork, and two movements, which is the particular object in view. The two movements, which is the groundwork, those are the movements that had been raised by God prior to the time when God bestowed the shepherd's rod. That is the Millerites movement and the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But the particular object in view in the two movements, when the shepherd's rod was given by God, of course, that is pointing to the first section of the Exodus, at the time when God gave rod to Moses, and second, the last section, which is led by Joshua. On the other hand, that is pointing to the first movement from 1930 to 1955 to our spiritual father, Jesse, and then the last movement, antitypical David. Now, we already studied that the divine commission that was given by God to the Seventh-day Adventist denomination is to prophesy to many nations, not to all, according to the many passages that we already read. But I would like to read again the statement in 1 TG. 1 TG 42, page 4. The conclusion then is that without this additional message, the church will never reach her goal. 1 TG 42, page 4. So, or in other words, without the shepherd's rod message, the Seventh-day Adventist Church could never be able to accomplish the task that had been committed to her. And the task that had been committed to her, we called it in Answerer number 1 as the fainter cry. Now, let's read again in Answerer number 1 on page 83. Moreover, the abominations in the church have not only kept back the loud cry, but have also given silence the fainter cry which precedes it. Indeed, the angel of the church of the Laodiceans, being unfit even to finish the proclamation of the message in his fainter cry, must altogether unfit to proclaim it in the loud cry. The loud cry proclamation is to all nations. Therefore, the fainter cry must be to many nations. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church failed to finish that work. Why? Because they reject the shepherd's rod, while the Bible is very, and there was given me a reed like unto a rod. It is implied in this verse that that pronoun me, he lovingly accept the shepherd's rod. And in 1 TG 42, page 4, it says that it utters the impossibility that the Seventh-day Adventist Church could reach her goal without the shepherd's rod message. But sad to say, even the seven antitypical brothers of David, as the history or the picture portray, because the statement in 1 SR 226, the picture, the photograph is portraying the true object in view with unmistakable evidence. Unmistakable evidence. Or in 1 SR 124, the picture tells the story. Because when B.T. Hotep died, our father, spiritual father Jay-Z, in 1955, instead of such spirit to understand what the shepherd's rod teaches, everybody is their goal is to prove that they are the successor of the movement of B.T. Hotep, and that is selfishness. Everyone claimed that we are the true movement, and the result, fighting against each other, hostile against each other faith. That's what happened. Now, let us go back again to the reading in track number 5 on page 108. Thus the doctrine of the investigative judgment, along with the doctrine of ingathering and numbering the 144,000, comprises the present truth committed to the Seventh-day Adventist denomination in 1844. And these two great truths, up to the additional message of today, early writings, page 277. The Seventh-day Adventist denomination was to proclaim before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. What is the additional message mentioned here? That is the shepherd's rod. And we already explained what are the two great truths mentioned. It is the former rain and the latter rain. One symbolic code 5 and 5. But in the first sentence, it was enumerated one by one. The message that had been entrusted to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the investigative judgment, the ingathering, and the numbering of the 144,000. It says these three doctrines comprises the present truth that had been given to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Our understanding of this sentence should not contradict to the other statement, the shepherd's rod. that the only message that was entrusted by God to the Seventh-day Adventist Church is the message that pertains to the judgment, that pertains to the dead, then the 144,000 here could not be pointing to the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel, because that message concerning the living was not entrusted by God to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Not all 144,000 are living saints. Although, we will separate that subject. But let us go back to track number 5 on page 107. In the particular object and view, according to the Shepherd's Rod, the many nations is the 144,000 living saints, the first fruits. And what is the message to proclaim to the 144,000 living saints? According to the Shepherd's Rod, found in Revelation 11 verse 1, because it was not disclosed in chapter 10 verse 11. So what does it mean? What is the significance? Measure the temple and the altar, and then the worshippers. We already read in track number 5, 110, that the term measure meaning investigate. I would like to read again the statement in track number 5. It says here, 108, the investigative judgment decides the cases of those who have professed faith in God and who in consequence have had their names recorded in the books. Daniel 7 verse 10. But some of whom have not endured to the end. It determines which name shall be retained and which shall be blotted out. So not until the investigation is completed. What investigation? Whose names to be retained and whose names to be blotted out. So not until the investigation is completed, the sanctuary cleansed from unworthy members, will the books show the exact number of names that will be retained and accounted worthy of life eternal. So that is very plain here in track number 5, 108. Who are they? The people mentioned in Revelation 10 verse 11, many nations, the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel. And what is the message to proclaim unto them? It is easy to understand that through the Shepherd's Rod message, after being commanded to measure the temple and the altar, and since the worshippers, that is the many nations, it's easy to understand that the messenger is proclaiming to the 144,000 living saints that the proceedings of the temple, the first 5 seals, and the last seal under the 6th seal, the last seal that pertains to the dead, is already finished. So that is a message to inform to them that our cases are now on trial with the worshippers. Now, I would like to connect to you to the subject, the 12 figurative months. Then we will go back to this subject. Remember, the Shepherd's Rod, very plain, in track number 6, on page 55 and 56, saying the scriptures make clear that while in the sanctuary, Christ receives the kingdom. So while Jesus Christ is still in the heavenly sanctuary, He receives the kingdom. After the thrones are cast down, He did not say, after the thrones were cast down, but inscribed in present tense. And after the investigative judgment is completed, before His second coming. To repeat again, the second coming mentioned here is not the visible, the invisible coming of Jesus Christ. If there is second coming, indicates that there was first coming. The first coming of Jesus Christ, I would like to summarize because we studied that several times. The first coming of Jesus Christ is the coming mentioned in track number 1, right? 36 and 37. He comes to give message to Ezekiel. And what is the message? To eat the Bible, meaning the complete unfoldment of the plan of redemption. In Matthew 24, verse 46 and 47, to make Him ruler over all His goods. When? 11 symbolic code number 12, page 7, when Jesus Christ will come. So that parable in Luke 19, that He has chosen someone to reign in His stead, that is the first invisible coming of Jesus Christ. And typifying, you remember when Jesus Christ was resurrected, that He did not allow Mary Magdalene to touch Him, that the same day He ascended to heaven, then returned to the earth. That is the type. In that visitation, according to the old symbolic code, within 15 minutes, He makes a round trip. And that is the time that He appointed that someone to reign in His stead. Then went back to the heavenly sanctuary. And that is why it is called second coming. What is the message saying, prophesy again in track number 5, 102, to repeat the preaching of Christ coming to the earth. What coming? Invisible coming. And when would that be? That coming, according to the reading, after the investigative judgment is completed.
Where? In the holy place. After all the names of the wicked had been completely blotted out. What coming mentioned there? The coming mentioned in Malachi 3, 1 to 3. Now, I would like to read to you 2SR 184. The description by Daniel applies to the commencement of the judgment for the dead, but the one by Malachi 3 verse 1 to 3 is applicable to the judgment for the living. All of the same event, Day of Atonement, cleansing of the sanctuary. Day of Atonement. What is Malachi 3 verse 1 to 3? Day of Atonement. So that coming of Jesus Christ in Malachi 3, 1 to 3 must be on the Day of Atonement. But after the investigative judgment in the holy place is completed, what is that investigative judgment? Blotting out of names. And of course, that is Day of Atonement, blotting out of names. We read several times in track number 3, page 73 and 74, being the Day of Atonement in type for both the dead and the living, this service of the earthly tabernacle therefore projects the Day of Atonement in its antitype, the cleansing of the sanctuary in heaven from the unworthy names in the books, and the cleansing of the church on earth from its unconverted and unstable members, thus bringing the time of clean books, clean church, and clean people. But let us focus first to the statement, bringing the time of clean books, clean people. Now, going back again to track number 5, 108. So not until the investigation is completed. What investigation? Which name shall be retained and which shall be blotted out? So not until the investigation is completed, the sanctuary cleansed from unworthy members. The same with track number 3, 73 and 74. Unworthy names. So not until the investigation is completed, the sanctuary cleansed from unworthy members, will the books show the exact number of names that will be retained and accounted worthy of life eternal. What is the exact number of names that will be retained? 144,000. Because that is the only numbered company in the thread of prophecy, according to the Shepherd's Rod. But it's the climactic point of chapter 10, the numbering of the 144,000. Going back again to 2TG 14, page 16. The subject of chapter 10 ends with the second verse of chapter 11. The verse which brings us to the time of the measuring, numbering of the people, which obviously is the numbering of the 144,000. Revelation 7, verse 3 to 8. For they are the only numbered company of people in the thread of prophecy. Thus it is that chapter 10, including verses 1 and 2 from chapter 11, begins at the time of the end and ends with the numbering of the 144,000. Now, thus the word numbering and ingathering is pointing to the same event. For sure, that is pointing to the same event, because when you began to gather, you are counting. So in Revelation 11, verse 2, 1 and 2, it is called numbering. But in the subject of the 5 symbolical months, it is called ingathering. Ingathering. And we already explained that Revelation 11, verse 1 is pointing to many nations. Revelation 11, verse 2 is pointing to all nations. Who are they, the all nations? The great multitude. Who are they, the many nations? The 144,000 living saints. What is the message in Revelation 11, verse 1? To inform them that the proceedings of the temple and the altar is already finished, and our cases now are on trial in the heavenly sanctuary. Now let us look at first to the statement here in track number 6, page 55. The scripture make clear that while in the sanctuary, Christ receives the kingdom. What does it mean by Christ receives the kingdom? In answerer number 2, page 88, acquires ownership of it. And in the writings of Sister White, what does it mean by acquires ownership of it? Jesus Christ claimed them as His own. And who are they? The 144,000 living saints. Now, I would like to read first, answerer number 2, page 88. Bringing into prophetic focus the same event, Jesus declared parabolically, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. Luke 19, verse 12. Note that he receives the kingdom, acquires ownership of it while he is away, not when he returns. Now, let us elaborate clearly that reading. Let us read for, again, the vision of Sister White in early writings. Already, although we read it several times, but the more we frequently read, the more we will comprehend it. Early writings, page 38. I saw 4 angels who had a work to do on the earth and were on their way to accomplish it. Jesus was clothed with priestly garments. He gazed in pity on the remnant then raised his hands, and with a voice of deep pity cried, "My blood, Father, my blood, my blood, my blood." Then I saw an exceeding bright light come from God, who sat upon the great white throne, and was shed all about Jesus. Then I saw an angel with a commission from Jesus swiftly flying to the four angels who had a work to do on the earth, and waving something up and down in his hand, and crying with a loud voice, "Hold, hold, 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 until the servants of God are sealed in their foreheads." I asked my accompanying angel the meaning of what I heard, and what the four angels were about to do. He said to me that it was God that restrained the powers, and that he gave his angels charge over things on the earth, that the four angels had power from God to hold the four winds, and that they were about to let them go. But while their hands were loosening, and the four winds were about to blow, the merciful eye of Jesus gazed on the remnant that were not sealed. And he raised his hands to the Father and pleaded with him that he had spilled his blood for them. Then another angel was commissioned to fly swiftly to the four angels and bid them hold until the servants of God were sealed with the seal of the living God in their foreheads. Jesus Christ called them remnant at the time by which they were not yet sealed. The shepherd's rod plainly told us that the word remnant in 1 SR 102, the definition of remnant, 1 SR 102, what constitutes the remnant? The definition of remnant is that which is left after the separation, removal, or destruction of a part. But it could not be destruction because they were not yet sealed. Why is it that they are called remnant? Because that occurrence is after the names of the wicked had been blotted out in the congregation among the living. In 1 TG number 6, page 38, it says, It is obvious that they escaped the destruction of the sinners in the church. Only the holy ones whose names are left written in the book escape the destruction that falls upon the wicked in the church. Only they constitute the remnant, the ones that are left. Who are they, the remnant? Those whose names are left written in the book. So the term left meaning after the separation or removal of the names of the wicked. So that reading in 1 TG 6:38, the blotting out of names in the heavenly sanctuary precedes the destruction, and only those whose names had been left written in the Lamb's Book of Life will be protected. But I would like to emphasize the vision in Earl Writings, page 38, when Jesus Christ is bringing the names of the 144,000 living saints in the presence of the Father as the fulfillment of the vision of Enoch, according to 2SR page 241, saying, Therefore the prophecy by Enoch commenced its fulfillment in 1844, at which time the Lord came with the names and records of those who are sleeping in the grave. And when the investigation of the dead is finished, then he comes with the names of the living saints, first with 144,000. So after the blotting out of names, of all the names of the wicked in the congregation among the living, Jesus Christ acquires ownership of that name, pleaded before the Father, hold the four winds, Father. Then he says, I spilled my blood for them. That is, acquires ownership. Jesus Christ is claiming them as his own. And that is in the heavenly sanctuary. While Jesus Christ was still in the heavenly sanctuary, he claimed them as his own. Who are they? Those names that had been left written in the Lamb's Book of Life. So this statement in Christ's Object Lesson is only the material side. In Christ's Object Lesson, page 68 and page 69, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Galatians 5 verse 22-23. This fruit can never perish, but will produce after its kind a harvest unto eternal life. When the fruit is brought forth, immediately he put it in the sickle, because the harvest is come. Christ is waiting with longing desire for the manifestation of himself in his church. When the character of Christ shall be perfectly reproduced in his people, then he will come to claim them as his own. But the fact is that he acquires ownership of them while Jesus Christ was still in the heavenly sanctuary. So I called it material side. Jesus Christ will come to claim them as his own. Let us focus our attention to the statement. Of course, we already explained after the investigative judgment is completed, that is pointing to the blotting out of names. We prove it with many passages. But how about the statement, after the thrones are cast down? That thrones that are cast down is in the palace ground, because in the vision of Sister White, located, the Father is sitting on the great white throne, and that is in the palace ground. Let's read 2SR. Here in 2SR, 171. 2SR 171. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He said not unto seeds as of many, but as of one, unto thy seed, which is Christ, the son of David. Galatians 3 verse 16. So who is that seed? That is Jesus Christ. The same with Genesis 49:10, saying, the scepter shall not depart from Judah until Shiloh come. And that is Jesus Christ. And we know that that prophetic verse was still unfulfilled in its perfect fulfillment. Because in Desire of Ages, let me read to you. Desire of Ages, I think page 34. It says, the dying words of Jacob filled them with hope. Page 34, Desire of Ages. The dying words of Jacob filled them with hope. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come. Genesis 49, verse 10. The waning power of Israel testified that the Messiah's coming was at hand. The prophecy of Daniel pictured the glory of his reign over an empire which should succeed all earthly kingdoms, and say the prophet, it shall stand forever. Daniel 2 verse 44. While few understood the nature of Christ's missions, there was a widespread expectation of a mighty prince who should establish his kingdom in Israel and who would come as a deliverer to the nations. Desire of Ages, page 34. So, Genesis 49 verse 10 is attached to Daniel 2 verse 44. That is why I've said that is still unfulfilled. Now let's read 2SR 171. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He said not unto seeds as of many, but as of one, unto thy seed, which is Christ, the son of David. Galatians 3 verse 16. Therefore Mount Zion, as in Revelation 14 verse 1. Of course, we know that the word as in is a comparative one, because the Mount Zion mentioned here is 2 Chronicles 21 verse 7. Now let's read first. 2 Chronicles chapter 21. 2 Chronicles 21 verse. Howbeit the Lord would not destroy the house of David because of the covenant that he had made with David, and as he promised to give a light to him and to his sons forever. And also the quotation in Psalms 122 verse 5. Psalms 122. For there are set thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Now let's go back to SR 171. Therefore Mount Zion, as in Revelation 14:1, is the eminent royal spot in the heavenly Jerusalem, as David himself says, for there are set thrones of judgment, the thrones in the house of David. Psalms 122 verse 5. So the statement in track number 6, page 55, the thrones are cast down, that is the fulfillment of Psalms 122 verse 5. The thrones are cast down in the house of David, which is Mount Zion, the palace ground, and it's called the Great White Throne. David looked forward to the time when the judgment in heaven would be set up. In that day, there shall be a fountain open to the house of David and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness. Zechariah 13, verse 1. We will continue that subject concerning Zechariah 13, verse 1. Very important subject. Which pertains to the judgment that pertains to the living. And also, we will gradually decipher and explain in a more comprehensive manner than Revelation 11 verse 1 and 2. One of the most important first two verses in chapter 11, which is a part of Revelation chapter 10. The last event before the seventh angel begins to sound, according to track number 5, page 100. So thank you very much, brethren, for listening and viewing this program. Hoping that the good Lord will bless you. See you again in our next episode. Have a beautiful, wonderful evening.